So first and foremost, just by way of hands or applause, how many people are here to see Dr. Disrespect? Like, what? Come on.
Me too.
That's what I'm talking about. When I think a lot of people, like obviously a lot of people know of Dr. Disrespect, I'd love to hear, like, how was this a career choice? I'd love to hear from your time at Activision all the way up to now. If you can kind of walk us through, what was that journey like for you?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, so I had a fantastic run at Activision. I was like, it just challenged all my creative senses. I loved it, like level design, sitting there and building maps and working in that creative environment, that collaborative environment with other extremely talented people. That was just like I was living a dream.
Sure.
And then, when it was time to sort of venture outside of the Call of Duty franchise and look for sort of like a new studio to work with and potentially move my family and location, all that stuff, there was it felt like, oh, I worked on Call of Duty, I should be able to pick up a job relatively quickly, just based off that experience.
Little game called Call of Duty.
Yeah, and that wasn't the case. It was I had probably 7-8 design tests that I went through, multiple interviews, and it was just it became this strenuous process, very stressful process for months. And again, I mean, it came down to this one company up in Washington, but at the same time, there was just something about meeting Sumit and the timing of that, and it literally came down to a decision. I mean, I'm talking 2 weeks, where it's like, do I go here? Do we move the family up to Washington? I'm a California kid. That's gonna be a big jump, but it's sort of a known path, right? Like, I know exactly what I'm gonna do. I know what 3 years down the line with that company is gonna look like, 5 years. Or there's this Sumit who's very energetic, passionate, very successful himself. He's got this idea. It kind of falls in the same realm. I get to start up an old passion. And ultimately, I mean, it was just like, my wife, Leo, you'd make the decision. And she ultimately made the decision. She's like, just go for your passion. And that's kind of how it started.
Can you talk to me about, like, why Twitch, why that platform? I'm really interested for several reasons, which I'll get into in a minute. But
sure. Yeah. No. I mean, going back to just like building levels. One of the things, you always have your one monitor, your two monitors for sort of the engine you're working in, and then your third monitor. On my third monitor, I always had like Summit 1G up on the live stream. I'd be watching Ninja play the old Halo games, because he was so good at it. But there's just a draw to just like have that. And I could just look up every couple moments. Oh, it's 30 to 35. Game goes to 50. It's just kind of getting close. Now my attention's up here. So the whole streaming was certainly an outlet, an entertainment type outlet, rather than just listening to music. Sometimes you get in the zone listening to music, right? But video games, for whatever, the background noise, whatever. I mean, it's free TV, right? But TV doesn't have video games.
Right.
This is So that's how I got into Twitch. I just have it on my third screen and just watch it, and eventually I kind of like started following certain people, again, like Summit and Ninja, getting behind them, supporting them. So
I'm curious to see, like, Guy, like, how do you leverage the chat? How do you interact? How do you take advantage of that interactivity? Because it's obviously a very different relationship you have with your audience.
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, well, it's funny because when I first started streaming on Twitch, like, the chat was the narrative.
Yeah.
Like, because you could stream a game and you can entertain through the game, right?
Sure, yeah.
Especially as like a character. But like, you need that third dimension, and that third dimension is the chat. Like, because someone says something in the chat, then now you have something you could draw a story off of, right? Like, if he, as the character always says, like, if a guy flaps his gums in the chat, he's negatively. If he's being a negative person, then it's like, I'm going to address that in a fun way as the character. So like in the beginning, and that's when I'm talking like where I had like 20 or 30 viewers.
Sure.
And then in 200-300, then it becomes more like there's a lot of energy there, and it's like, okay, cool. Now things are really rocking and rolling. Now it's really tough to engage what the chat's doing, right?
I'm sure. Yeah, just cruises by.
Yeah. So it's like. It's actually become a little bit more difficult on where do you put your sort of your energy into, because you've got donations and people that are subbing, and you certainly want to acknowledge that,
for
right?
sure.
Like but at the same time, how can you still make sure that the people that are actually watching, the other thousands of people that are watching are getting noticed or feeling wanted or empowered. And I think that's the most important part for a streamer, especially like sort of a bigger streamer, is like continuously empowering your community. And I think that's what we're trying to do at Boom. We've got a replay system. So like if something cool happens on the stream, all of a sudden you see this emote spammed in the chat, and if it hits a certain amount of emotes, then a replay of that cool moment will happen live on stream.
What's the craziest thing that either kind of evolved organically from your chat, or what was the actual like best smackdown you did to somebody? All time.
I couldn't remember that.
There's so many.
I think a lot of things develop from the chat. Like if I'm in a moment and I'll say, like one example is there's like the violence, speed, momentum sort of quote that the doctor says a lot. I mean, he said that after he killed like 3 guys in H1Z1, he's feeling good and felt powerful, and he screamed at violence, speed, momentum. And I noticed that the chat was
going crazy.
Going
crazy, and they kept on repeating and repeating, and so now it's sort of a staple of the channel.
It's a mantra.
And a lot of those things are, they certainly pop up from the chat, like that I forget about. Like, when I first screamed Raul or Portugal or a lot of these weird things, the chat loves it. It seems like they like those type of things.
Yeah,
so.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Very cool. I think we've got a question right over here, right?
Does this work? Hey, I'm Jason. I'm a founder of a company called Vivo, a streaming app. We're big fan viewers. I'm curious, Guy, you've got a lot of perspective coming from YouTube, watching Twitch grow. You have one of the biggest channels on Twitch that rivals like a lot of cable channels. Ninja has like a bigger audience than like the Overwatch League, and he's getting $90 million or the Overwatch League is getting $90 million deals. Where do you see your streaming career and other large streaming careers like in 3 years?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the answer certainly varies amongst each individual streamer and their goals, both short term and long term. I think given sort of the nature of my channel and sort of the odd nature that it's driven by a character, like sort of the big picture that I'm looking at is potentially like a TV show, just because of the fictional story that's surrounding the character, like being the most dominating video game player in the entire world. Like I think that right there is a storyline.
It's a superpower.
Yeah, is a superpower. So, I mean, 2 or 3 years, you'd like to work up to that step, whether that's trying to take the channel to the next level on Twitch currently, or I mean, hearing about how Netflix might, there's those type of adventures. Like I certainly would want to take it to the TV show series. If there's movie opportunities with the character, I'm open to that. But one thing that I am lacking on a personal level is like a creative challenge. Right now, just streaming on Twitch daily, 5 days a week, and kind of doing the same thing, playing the same content. It's not necessarily wearing me down. It just doesn't feel creatively challenging enough. And I don't know what that next level is or what that outlet could be, but I'm looking for it. So, yeah. Hope that answers your question. Cool.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Wenz. I was just wondering if you've ever experimented with answering a live stream of questions that are curated during downtime in between games, almost like a live and personal AMA with a chosen set of Twitch users.
I haven't thought of that. One of the things I have a challenge with is a structured schedule of streaming events throughout a stream. Like I'm terrible at it. Like Boom, I'm supposed to run Boom tournaments on Thursdays and Fridays at like 4 o'clock, right? And it's like 4:30, 4:45. I'm in the middle of the game. I'm getting texts like, hey, are you gonna start that tournament? So for me that's certainly, I like that idea. I feel like I try to tackle, again, in an organic way. Like, I'll look at the chat. If something catches my eye in chat during any sort of downtime between a game, or if I've died early and my teammate's still alive and I'm spectating him, I'll look at the chat. And if I see something that is worth bringing up on stream and making a kind of like a narrative or story out of it, that's what I usually do. But that is interesting.
So, Guy, I had a question for you. You had mentioned just in terms of, elevating your creativity and kind of trying different platforms from Twitch, and you'd mentioned Netflix. So, I was just curious, what kind of partnerships are you most excited about in terms of the future of gaming content like you're creating?
Partnerships as in, like,
What things do you want to do? Beyond Twitch. You'd mentioned Netflix, some other things, and in terms of just partnerships that you think would be great for your brand.
sure. It's, God, this industry is so tricky. It's constantly just evolving and changing. I mean, right now, if you look at Twitch platform and with the sort of the rise of Fortnite, that's introduced a completely new demographic. Not completely new demographic, but certainly an influx of a specific demographic to the platform, being sort of a younger audience. And, it feels like the character there, like he, not necessarily is worn out his welcome or anything like that, but his demographic, I'm not sure particularly caters to that demographic, this influx. So as Twitch is growing in that sort of capacity, like in that sort of way, is it the right fit for the character? And so, like, I'm excited to hear how Mixer's going to do, how their platform is going to evolve over the next year or two. They're putting a lot of resources in Facebook. Facebook.gg's just got into it. I'd be curious to see how that platform evolves. Hulu, Netflix, you just got a feeling that they're going to look at these numbers and just go, okay, we need to get into the live streaming